We already know what we know, but sometimes we just need to listen.
Last night I was watching some mixed martial art, left watching stuff. I used to practice the martial art years ago, fought in quite a few tournaments. They're always light contact tournaments. Never really experienced anything as brutal as what we see today on television, mixed martial art. I love watching it, but I would never do it. I wouldn't want my kids to do it either. But I was watching these two gentlemen last night, two African American men, and they were pretty good, both of them. And sometimes I hate to see black folks fighting in mixed martial art because I don't want any of them to be humiliated. I guess that's wrong of me, I suppose. But anyway, they were fighting, and I was enjoying the fight. Because there was something different about when I was watching these two brothers fight, because they respected each other. And when one of them would throw a good blow or a good kick and hit or kick the other one or score on the other one would, give him a little high five or something. Tell him it was a good shot. And they were really polite throughout this whole fight. And initially when they were doing this, it was like, okay, folks were rolling. But as the fight progressed, and these were only like 3-round fights, the crowd started getting upset. And so were the commentators. They were just how ridiculous this was and how they needed to stop, respecting each other and congratulating each other. I thought that was quite interesting. Once the end of the fight came, they both did well. It could have gone either way. One of the gentlemen won, of course, the other one lost. But I got to thinking about that. And when I joined the martial art many years ago when I was a teenager, there was like an honor in the martial art. There was mutual respect, even for your opponent. But something about how America, how we could take something and gank it and make it something of our own and change it just a little bit. In time, what used to be an honorable sport, it lost all honor. People hated each other. People were mad at each other, dishing each other, and just really trying to harm and injure each other. There was no more respect. And it was quite refreshing to see that fight last night. I really enjoyed it. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way competition is supposed to be. We look at even the recent 2 elections in this nation and see the venom and the hate and the vitriol. And you can pull up any article on the internet, begin to look at the comments after the article. So many negative people, so many sarcastic people, so many mean folks. It's like everybody's mad. Gotten kind of jacked up. And the politics. Not just politics, in every aspect of life. And so often you'll find lines are drawn, like racial lines are drawn, especially in this nation since the elections. I saw another thing quite interesting the other day was that young girl who was, I guess supposedly or maybe kidnapped or something by a gentleman who killed her mother and killed her brother. And folks are beginning to suggest that maybe she was complicit in that crime, in those crimes, and she was part of it, and all the truth hadn't come out, and I don't know if that's true or not. But then I found announcer after announcer began talking and defending the girl, saying she's just a young girl, she's just 16, she's innocent, and, no matter what, there was a man involved, and he was more of the influence of anything in this young girl's life, so whatever the situation, she was innocent because there was an adult involved. And you wanted to feel that as well, especially those of us that have children. But it wasn't too long ago when Trayvon Martin, who was basically the same age as this young girl, was in a conflict or in a situation with an adult, and he was killed. But there were so many that didn't have the same sympathy for Trayvon Martin, who was basically the same age as this young girl, who was the victim of the Rasputin type, manipulations of this gentleman that she was with. How two individuals can be basically virtually the same age. Yet the attitudes about them can be completely different because of the lines that have been drawn in the sand. There is a hate, there is a vitriol, there is an issue that we have in this nation. That we have to hate, we have to be angry, we have to be mean, and we have to find a reason why. It was interesting when those two fighters were fighting yesterday, that the audience and the announcers were getting upset because they weren't mad at each other. It's very interesting. It seems to be the condition of the world. I want to say the condition of the world today, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But as I was coming from church this afternoon, I was listening to the radio, to a satellite radio, the Soul Town part of satellite radio. They were playing "Ball of Confusion" by the Temptations. And as many of you know that song, they begin running down all these issues that society faced. And it seemed like every one of them were the same issues that we face today. So very little has changed. I think part of it was the Beatles' new record of Gas. Of course, that has changed. But all the other issues we're dealing with now, we're dealing with then, probably all this time in between. So what's the difference? I have to believe President Obama sitting up in that office has a big part of the difference. But what we're going to talk about today, because we want to find wellness, we want to find healing. I mean, it's easy. It's easy just to sit back and pick at a thing and identify negativities and then just be part of the chaos, part of the conflict, part of the ball of confusion. Or to be one that tries to find an answer, tries to find a solution in this area of peace and wellness and rationalization. Like come, let us reason together. And so what I want to talk about today, and to sort of understand the mindset or the psyche of the American black man, and not just black man, white man, all folks really. I want to use the Middle East conflict, the conflict especially in Egypt, in Cairo, going on right now as we speak. And I find it very interesting, the unrest going on, to where people are being killed. And President Obama in America, the president of this nation, is taking a lot of heat for not being able to fix the situation or somehow being the cause of that situation. And we're going to take that situation in the Middle East, that situation in Egypt, and tie it to our lives as individuals, not simply as Americans, but as just folks, as individual folks in this nation, and see the correlation. Because a lot of times what it takes is something on the outside for us to look at. A lot of times. We might have issues within ourselves, and they're impossible to see because however we spin the story of our lives, we are the protagonist, we are the victim, and we are the hero. We're the good guy. Somebody else is the bad guy. But what it takes sometimes is to see a situation with two other parties that are involved with each other, and begin to really sort of observe what's going on there without a piece in it, without any interest in the fight. To begin to see a thing or two. And so when I look at that situation in the Middle East and I see Obama taking a lot of heat and trying to find a way to quell the issue there, he can't. Okay. There are issues that have always been going on there. Right now the conflict is between the military and the Muslim Brotherhood. And prior to this conflict, it was the Muslim Brotherhood and everybody else. And prior to that conflict, it was Mubarak, who was actually of the military when Sadat was murdered, and he became in charge. So then it was the military for 30 years prior to that. And so then what we really see, and Sadat was assassinated, trying to make peace with Israel. Some of y'all aren't old enough to remember that. So what you have here, really, what's going on in Egypt right now is a conflict that's been going on, in my lifetime, in many of our lifetimes for the past 40 years. Where power exchanged hands back and forth, and whoever was in power, somebody else was mad. There was always a conflict. There was always an issue of hate, of chaos, of killing going on. So there's not really much Obama can do about that. Unrest, chaos, hate, murder, intolerance. But what I'm going to focus on today, as we sort of whittle this down to the individual in America, is that this is what happens in every nation. Not just the Middle East, not just in Egypt. Of course, in every nation, it seems, in the Middle East, there's all kinds of issues going on. But what about America? What about this nation or every other nation on this planet? See, we think sometimes because we don't hear the dissent, we don't hear the complaints, we don't hear the cries for help from an oppressed people, we think there's no oppression. But there are always folks that are not faring well in any nation. The nations that seem to be peaceful, seem to be without conflict and without chaos, there's always a voiceless, oppressed people even within those nations. There's always something going on. There's always somebody suffering, okay? And so it's not enough simply to switch places, take this person who's suffering and put him in charge, take this person out of being in charge and place him over here, because it's not long before he'll be suffering as well. So it's just simply the way it is. Human nature, human beings. That's how we want to tie this into people, into us. Well, look at America. Look at the state of America today. We're not killing each other so much on a wide scale, like factions and all. But we're killing ourselves. We're pretty obese, an obese nation suffering from obesity. We're a nation suffering from alcoholism and drug addiction. And we are a nation suffering with hate, tremendous hate for each other. And so in a sense, we have the same issue Egypt has, just in a less noticeable, less violent way. But we as well, we're killing ourselves. We're harming ourselves. We're hating each other. There's a tremendous division. And we can complain about this even as black folks, because we feel a lot of times that we're not being treated fairly. And many of you that have been listening to this program realize that I'm not really in that camp. I believe that especially with President Obama, we've been given an opportunity to see that we can do more than what we have been doing. We've been given an opportunity to see that we are not handicapped, that we do not need handouts, that if we just do right, if we just pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps with what is available right now, we can fare better in life. And as long as we're standing around complaining because we're afraid of losing our benefits, or complaining because the voting rules have changed, complaining because the gun laws are causing us that seem to victimize us and all, as long as we're complaining and waiting for somebody else to help us, we'll never be in power. So what I'm suggesting is today we need to begin to see what's really going on and recognize that we are the culprits to our own demise. And that the suffering that we are going through in our lives is sort of on a smaller scale. What we're seeing in other nations is the battle within ourselves. It's the battle to do what we need to do. I'm convinced that if we as African Americans begin doing what we need to do for ourselves, a lot of our suffering will diminish. A lot of our dependence on handouts and welfare will diminish. A lot of the attitudes and actions that we take that sort of validate the criticisms from the other sides will begin to go away. Now we know that there'll always be those criticizing, that there'll always be those that are taking issue, but that's on them. Speaking to this gentleman today, one of the commission representatives, a voice in one of our local communities, educating them. And he's ragging on the school system today. And he has some suggestions. I asked him, well, what's your suggestion? We can rag all day, but what do you suggest? He said, well, what they're doing right now, they're shuffling, they're reorganizing the schools, like changing this school that was once, you know, maybe K through 8, making it 5th through 8th grade. And then taking another school and putting those K through 4th graders in that school. And then high school over here is pretty much remaining the same. And he had issues with that, you know, that we should stop spreading them out. We have too many classrooms now that are vacant, and we should start looking at the trends in our neighborhoods and begin selling buildings that really aren't being used to their capacity. That was very interesting, because this is a very wise man. But what I was thinking, and I sort of suggested, was that, you know, the issues that we have today are a lot greater than simply, you know, shuffling things around or changing things or making, you know, selling this or cutting this out or replacing this person with that person. There was an underlying issue of unhealthiness that we have in the African American community, that what we've embraced as being good is not good. You know, when I came up in the 70s, if you were bad, that meant you were good. You know, and if you know, so we had all these opposites. We had these opposite things, or different kind of things to describe what we were. And what I want to suggest is that maybe we've bought into that, and as often as we affirm that when we were bad, you know, good people were really bad. That was another name for good, was bad. That somehow today we've bought into the bad and become just that, and we can't really tell the difference. Okay. And so I'm looking at the alcohol use in our community. I'm looking at the drug use in our community. I'm looking at the immorality in our community. Folks, but you know, the children that are being born out of wedlock in our community. I'm looking at the violence, you know, upon each other that we perpetrate on each other in our community. I'm even looking at the music industry and the things that we've bought into and we've embraced and enjoyed as things that are harmful to us. Okay. You know, I know we're having this battle in the news media between like Russell Simmons and then Lemons, that CNN guy, and with Tavis Smiley and Cornel West against Obama, and we have all these little battles even within the black community going on. And what I'm suggesting is that our issues are a lot deeper than politics. That we have situations of our lives that we have bought into that we just think are all right, and they're not. They're destroying our community. And sometimes we have to take drastic measures. I remember somebody saying, you know, well, we could like alcohol, because I come off on it, you know, that we should just stop doing alcohol altogether. And then I hear, well, just a little alcohol isn't going to hurt you. And I'm like, well, you know, it's poison. So if you could just get away with drinking a little bit of poison before it starts to hurt you, how ridiculous is that? What you're going to find with a lot of the folks that are supporting particular ways of life or particular rights of folks are people that have particular interest in the positions that they're defending. Like I think one of the obvious ones is the NRA, the Rifle Association, when they don't want any type of gun restrictions at all. Well, you know, they're selling guns. You know, they're part of that gun situation out there where many people are making millions of dollars selling guns, and it's a big industry out there, guns and bullets and all the components, everything that goes with those things. So those people have a vested interest in the position that they have, whether they believe it or not. Sort of like the I think it was that congressman, what's his name, in Ohio, I cannot remember his name, but he was like a Republican against the whole gay folks and the gay issue, and then turns around that his son is gay, and then he changes his position, you know, on that issue. Now whether he's right or wrong, or whether it's good or bad, the position he now embraces, well, what I find very interesting is that he only changes position when it personally affected him. Now these are the people that we expect are representatives of particular ideologies and representatives of the people that embrace those ideologies as well. And how this gentleman can change his stance simply because it affects his family this way tells you a little bit of something about the integrity of the people that are fighting these battles, whose voices are so loud. And so even when we're talking about the rap industry and the music industry, and we find people like Russell Simmons, you know, defending it because this is just an example of the black community and blah, 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 and all this stuff. Well, you know, come on now. He does have a vested interest in this industry. So I don't really see Russell Simmons as he argues for the music industry as it is today any different than the NRA as they argue about the ills of gun control. You know, they both have a vested interest in what they're arguing. Okay, and they really don't care too much about the individual. They care about their dollar. And I have a problem with caring about the dollar. You know, I feel I'm an entrepreneur at times myself, and my wife is as well. But still, it's at what point? You know, what do we allow? How much of our morality do we allow to be yanked from us in order to make that buck? That's the question. That's the question. And so I think as individuals, even when we look at this situation, as we started with the Mideast situation. So much chaos, so much bloodshed, hate, and violence, and all that, and then we bring it down to every nation in this world, the issues that they have, the issues that tremendous racial and other issues that we have in this nation. Well, how do we fix these things? It's a good question. I think first thing, it can't be fixed on a large scale. Can't be fixed by the church. Because the church, come on, man, the church itself, the traditional Christian church in America today is so, they got their hands full with the issues on their plate, okay? I know there was a preacher, Pat Robertson, some years ago that made this statement to Christians, you know, nationwide, that in particular here, the wealth of the wicked was going to be laid up for the righteous, which is a Bible verse, that all the money that the wicked has accumulated is going to somehow be spread upon those that are righteous, you know, and then it didn't happen. And I was thinking, you know, as I was considering that today, well, you know, if the wealth of the wicked was taken away from the wicked, a lot of the churches would have failed at that point, right? Because that's where the wealth of the wicked lies. All over this nation are in churches and in the bank accounts of their leaders, okay? But that's another story for another time. So it's not the church. The church can't fix this situation because they're so embroiled in it. They're embroiled in the politics. Come on. They're embroiled in the gun issue. They're embroiled in all these issues that the world is supposed to be dealing with. And so they're toothless. The church is toothless in this nation. It's not going to be handled by the church either. It's got to be handled by us as individuals, one by one, individual by individual. We have to decide. See, it's not enough because we're all victims. We're all victims to the environments that we have been raised in. We're all victims to the ideologies that we have sort of embraced, or that have been thrust upon us by the families that we were raised in, the economic class that we were raised in, the neighbors that we have, and we're victims to that. We don't know. We can't really trust what we believe. So then what do we do with that? What I'm suggesting is this is the time for some serious introspection, some critical thought. And sometimes it's difficult to challenge what we've bought into because it's so real to us. Like you take a child and you say, well, you know, maybe children, I'm just saying children shouldn't be born out of wedlock, okay? Let's say that. But then you have an individual that was born out of wedlock. It is very difficult to grasp how wrong that is if you are an individual that is a product of that. Okay, so I'm saying, so this holds true with every issue and every subject that we are faced with in life. We have particular positions that it's very difficult for us to challenge our own position. That's why we spend so much time arguing points, because we believe what we believe, and a lot of times we can't hardly understand why somebody would believe what they believe. But it's time. You can't change another person. It's impossible to change people with an argument like that, to get them to say, to give up their position and say, okay, I'll be like you, or okay, I'll think like you now. But so we as individuals, we have to, if we really want to be well, we have to stop trying to challenge other folks, but challenge ourselves, okay? What's wrong with me? Is there anything wrong with me? And again, it's very difficult at times to determine what's wrong with you or what's wrong with your thinking, because this is simply who we are. So at times, Many times, often, we need to begin to look at the results in our life. Begin to look at the results in our life and use that to determine if we're on the right path. If the results are wrong, there's probably something wrong with you. I remember I was at work one day speaking to a gentleman that was in management. And he was telling me one day, because we were cool, and he was saying he didn't understand why there were so many people that were not in management, that had opportunities to be in management, and they were just satisfied being where they were, that they didn't have enough ambition. They didn't have enough self-identity to recognize that they could be more. So he's really looking down at them like, how come they're not like me? How come they're not trying to move up the ladder, like I am, because the opportunity is there? But now this man, his whole family had fallen apart. His wife had left him. They had just gone through a terrible divorce. He lost terribly financially, lost both of his kids. Now, but he can't see that. Now he blames that on her as well. He can't see the issues of his life, but he can see the issues of folks' lives who aren't trying to climb up the corporate ladder. Now these folks that aren't climbing up the corporate ladder, many of them have good relationships, good family situations. Well, as good as they can be, as humanly possible. But he can't see the ills in his own situation, family-wise, but he can identify the ills in other folks' situation in the workplace. That's what I'm saying. We need to stop looking at other folks and criticizing other folks. And I know that's very hard at this time in our nation because that seems to be the thing to do. Looking at other people's issues and identifying their problems. But it's time that if we really want this situation to be fixed. Now if we really don't want it to be fixed, that's something else. I mean, we can argue all day long. But if we really want, first of all, that world situation in Egypt, they're going to have to come to their own conclusion. And it's probably not going to happen, okay? But as far as in this nation, you simply as an individual, black folks or white folks, or you as an individual, you have to determine yourself, do I want to fix this situation? Or am I going to allow it to continue the way that it's been? Now we just might very well say, we're just going to act like we don't see it. We're going to allow it to continue to be the way it is and blame it on somebody else. We can look at that. Look down and look at your stomach. Is your stomach hanging over your belt? Are you out of shape? Then you've decided for your own life that you're just going to go ahead and just ignore a real situation that's facing you. So that's probably the way it's going to be in other aspects, other areas of your life. That's just the way it is. We really need to begin to be more critical of ourselves, okay, for real. And that's what I'm talking about. And I think that's the fix. See, again, it's easy. It's easy to sit back and look at everything that's wrong, look at everything especially that's wrong in other folks, and just identify all the problems and what's wrong and all this stuff. I mean, I had to get rid of a Facebook friend who was still ragging on Obama. I'm like, it's been 2 elections, he's in there. I ain't going to be fighting this stuff. I had to defriend this guy. Because I wasn't going to be doing this for another 4 years. Come on. But the economy's better than it's been in 5 years, and they're still ragging. We just want to be negative. We can't help it. That's who we are. And the only way to fix it is as an individual. Sometimes what it takes is to realize that you have children, and they're looking at you. You have little eyes that are looking at you, and they're going to be just like you. You really need to do some introspection and ask yourself, do you really want this kid to end up like you? They're going to be just like me, and they're going to be just like you too. So sometimes it takes even something outside of yourself to move you and encourage you to begin to look inward and look into yourself to determine that this is not the way I want to be. This is not what I want to represent. This is not the example I want to be before my children, because this is not what I want my children to be. We don't want them to be full of hate. What is it that's killing us with the heart attacks and with the stomach ulcers and with all the myriad of diseases? Doctors will tell you a lot of times it's your attitude as well, coupled with the foods we eat and the lack of exercise and a lot of the habits that we have. So we just need to chill out. The only way we're going to do it is to begin to look inwardly, to begin to deal with ourselves for real. It's like the guy on the internet today, a buddy of mine from years ago. He's in management at a major company neighboring city, and he's not really happy. He's not happy. He's not happy as many folks are not happy. And he believes that a certain thing is going to bring him more happiness. I shared with him today, that things don't bring you happiness. We're always searching for something to bring us happiness, to bring us peace. What it is the peace. That's really what it is deep inside, in the innermost recesses of every human being. You want to put here the heart, but the mind, it's the mind up here, but the heart makes you really feel it. But the innermost recesses of every human being is a deep, deep yearning for peace. Just to be well, just to be calm, just to be content, to be happy, to be okay. But that's within us. That's like on a subconscious level. I want to say, even if there is such a thing, out deeper than subconscious level, it's like that there place, and we hardly ever feel it. Sometimes we might experience certain smells or certain sensations that we might remember as a child. And we might say, well, that's it. I remember that. And we have this good feeling. Because I think even as a child, we were closer to that inner peace that as we grew and became adults, and as we grew up and grew older, having experienced so much negativity, so many issues, so many things, and we've just become so corrupted from that innocent child that we once were. And so that's why when we smell, for me it's mothballs, from my Aunt Martha's house in New York, or maybe you'll smell something like marigolds when I walk by some marigolds. And I remember from my mother's house years and years ago when I was a child. And we all have these things, these smells that we smell that bring us back to a particular time. Why? Because it brings us back to a time when we were more in touch with that inner peace than we are today. And I'm saying that's what we need to get. That's what we're lacking. And now as adults, because we've journeyed so far away from that, we've already determined on a conscious level what kind of things will bring us that peace, what kind of things will bring us that calmness, that inner wellness, that I don't even want to say joy, but just that okayness inside, that calmness. And so we think, well, maybe if I make more money, that'll be it. I'll be okay. Or maybe if I have a certain relationship, a certain man might be wanting a wife, or a woman might be wanting a husband, and all this stuff, or a whole myriad of things. Maybe I need a new house, or I need a new job, I need a new car. All these things that we think will bring us that happiness. The fact is, it doesn't. Because you're going to find a lot of people with a lot of money that don't have peace, inner peace. You're going to find a lot of people that are in relationships that don't have inner peace. A lot of people that get their new house and that get their new car, and they don't have inner peace. Because the peace isn't in the thing. The peace has to be there already. And see, that's what we're looking for. Whether we're talking about the Middle East and the conflicts and all that, they're looking for a peace. It's a peace inside. That's it. Because really, if you look at those guys that are fighting in any of those nations, in any of our nations, in our nation here, Vietnam, for example, or any of those nations, I mean, you take a look at two of them standing next to each other, they look exactly alike, so what is it? Well, it's the ideology. This man wants democracy. This wants communism. This guy wants a theocracy. This guy, everybody believes that this is the thing that'll bring wellness, when really it won't. It's just a thing that they have determined will satisfy that inner lack that they have. Inner peace, that peace has to be there. You have to get that peace first. And so that's where really what it all boils down to is the peace. Money. If you want money and peace, you have to have the peace first. If you want a healthy relationship and peace, you have to have the peace first. It's whatever it is that you want, it's fine to acquire it, but it's not going to bring you peace. You have to have the peace already. That thing, that person, that status, the acclaim, that folks are looking at you like he's all that or she's all that. Without the peace, it's nothing. I think there's a biblical verse that says something like, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. At the end of the day, what does it matter? At the end of the day, what does it matter? We just need that peace. Life is so short. Let's have some peace. And let's pass that peace on to our children. Quit trying so hard. Quit getting them to believe that their peace is in what they have. Their wellness is in what they've acquired. But in order to get them to quit believing it, we have to quit believing it. So how do we get there? How do we get that peace? We I'm going to share that with you. It's very important. Now, let me give you maybe some manifestations of that peace. A manifestation of that peace would be how you look at a thing. You know that old saying, is your glass either half full or half empty? You know? Well, the reality is, if that's the case, your glass is half full and it's half empty. Okay? But as far as our mindset and our attitudes are about the things that we judge, too often we judge the negative when there's a choice. If there's a choice to believe or not to believe, and there's no other evidence, we too often choose not to believe. If there's an opportunity to be happy about a thing or sad about a thing, and there's no other evidence, too often we choose simply to be sad about it. If there's an opportunity for us to be angry about a thing or okay about a thing, and there's no other evidence, we choose to be angry about a thing. We have to begin to change our choices, what we choose to believe, how we choose to be. I talk to my children all the time about that. You can't have what you want, but what about what you got? You have to find a way to be content. I work with folks, and we have overtime for folks that want it. And if the management doesn't call them in to work overtime, they get mad because they didn't get to work that overtime. But then if they call them in to work overtime, they get mad because they don't get to stay home. I'm like, what is that about? For me, it's like if you call me in to work, then I get to make more money. If you don't call me in to work, I get to stay home. It's the same situation, it's just a different mind. We have to begin to practice being well, practice being content, practice not choosing to be angry when you don't have to. At home, husbands and wives are good trained for this. Because being two individuals, there's very, very rarely are you really on the exact same page on a particular subject. How difficult is it to give in and roll with it? And not just give in to be pissed off, but to give in and be able to roll with it. We have to begin to train ourselves. I'm on the internet sometimes, and I've had to work on this myself. Because I've been in conflicts, on Facebook or in comments after articles, about with a lot of folks, and then arguing back and forth and blah, blah, blah. I've had to get to the point where, I have to admit, my wife helped me. She's like, why are you always, in those situations or in those debates, And I was like, well, they said this, I have to say, no, did I? Do I? And so I found myself even, when I want to, just not responding to some of the comments that are made, on the internet. I find myself even now, as I'm getting out of that I've even typed like 3 or 4 sentences, and then gone back and just deleted it, and just gotten out of that site. Certain situations, certain fights just aren't necessary. We have to begin to train ourselves to peace, to have peace. It's very important. And so for me, what I want to share with you is like meditation. Meditation is very important. It's like getting clarity. It's when everything is shut off and you're just chilling, quiet and breathing and listening to your breathing and just being very calm. It's like all the thoughts. Some people in their meditation, they say, well, just say or say a particular word or a particular phrase to try to stay focused on a light candle or something on the wall. So you can make sure you have control of your mind. No, not for me. For meditation, I let my mind go wherever it wants, whatever it wants to be thought. And for me, it's almost like all these thoughts are everywhere. That's how it is in our minds. That's why it's hard to focus sometimes. But when you're in quiet, in your meditation, and those thoughts begin to come, you begin to consider those thoughts. And sometimes those thoughts, they begin to rearrange. And they begin to come into some kind of perspective, a perspective that makes more sense. And so that's what meditation does for me. It gives time to bring clarity to the myriad of situations that are like bombarding our minds on a constant basis. Be thoughtful about our attitudes and, that's really not that serious. And try to get in tune, because I'm convinced that inner peace that we're all really searching for out here, it's in here. It's that voice. It's our own. It's that voice inside. It's our conscience. It's our mind. It's. I don't want to sound mystic or supernatural or anything, but I believe that there is a wellness within every human being that if we can just commune within ourselves, we'll find that peace. That peace is in you. You know, my hero was like Kwai Chang Caine. Remember that guy in that movie Kung Fu, that series? He was like half American, half Chinese cowboy guy walking in the desert, walking through. Yeah, there's a peace within yourself where you're not angry with any man, that you're a friend to all men, or at least not an enemy of men. That you're not angry at anybody, that anybody's perspective, no matter how negative, no matter how heinous, even if it's directed to you, it's a result of victimization. They're a victim of the environment that they came up in, that they were thrust into. None of us really have a choice in the respect of what has influenced us tremendously, them or us. So it is a journey, though. It is a journey, and it's almost like, as I'm considering that movie, that show with Kwai Chang Caine, David Carradine walking through the desert, it's almost like to find that place. To find that place of wellness is like in a desert. You begin walking away from everything, walking away from the influences, from the voices of your friends, the voices of your family, and trying to find clarity, trying to find truth. And if you seek truth, you will find truth. If you just grasp a hold of everything that you were raised to believe and taught to believe, and anger and hate and intolerance and mad and all that stuff, and criticism and name calling and cat calling and stereotypes and racism and xenophobism and all kinds of phobias and all that stuff, you'll never get there. But as you begin to seek truth for real, you have to begin to release the things that you've been holding on to and say, to yourself, to that voice within you, I'm listening. And that's the beginning.